So continuing my look into legendary weapons of Borderlands 4, we're going to be taking a look at 10 more legendary weapons, and keep in mind two different things. Because this was an early build of the game, some of the legendary weapon parts don't have descriptions, but on launch, all legendary parts, no matter what gear type it's on, should have a description of what it does, or at least a description kind of telling you what it does. And the second thing is most of these are low level weapons, so they're not going to have a ton of additional weapon parts on them. As you get higher and higher level, you just have a higher chance to get more weapon parts on those items. So the first weapon we have is the Playful Roach, a Torg pistol, and its legendary role is Flesh Eaters. Shoots eggs that hatch flying roaches when attached to flesh, living or dead. And this is just a super interesting weapon. Just being able to shoot any flesh enemy or, I don't know, potentially allies, and having it just summon these roaches is really cool. And I'm assuming these roaches are going to be basing their damage upon this pistol's damage, so there is the possibility maybe having other effects throughout the game actually affect the roach's damage. And we don't know this yet, but there is also the possibility that roaches are considered like minions. You have a bunch of ways to buff up minions in Vex's skill trees, so maybe they could also be buffed up through that way. So there is some really interesting potential, but this pistol just seems really interesting in general. And next up, we have the Prince Harming, a legendary SMG, and its legendary role is Pamplemousse. Hitting enemies deals damage to you and grants a stack of cruelty, which on kill restores some amount of overshield per stack for a max of 30 stacks. And this is a really interesting weapon roll. And this is also a ripper weapon. So you basically charge it up, then it just shoots fully automatic and doesn't stop. And this one does also have a corrosive roll on it. Not sure if it'd be able to get any other elements on it, but it's a really interesting effect. When you're damaging enemies, it looks like you're doing close to half the damage to yourself. I'm presuming the damage you deal to yourself through this isn't scaled through all of your other effects. If that was the case, this weapon would probably be useless. You would just end up killing yourself almost instantly, especially once you get into the end game. But if this actually works and doesn't just kill you, this could be really interesting. Just hitting enemies deals damage to you, but gives you these stacks you could stack up really quickly. This weapon has a pretty fast fire rate, so you can stack it up quickly. Then when you get a kill, it just gives you a ton of overshield. And it really depends on how long overshield lasts. If there are ways to say increase the duration of overshield and have it stay on you for longer periods of time, and how much you could actually stack up that overshield, and if there are effects that stacking more overshield actually gives you certain buffs. Because later into the game, if this thing doesn't kill you, you could pretty easily just be getting crazy amounts of overshield through this. And this weapon does also have the Ripper manufacturer roll on it, which the gun charges before fully auto firing. And I'm still not sure how these legendary weapons are going to work, because they work in a bit of a different way when it comes to manufacturers than all the other weapons, because the legendary weapons have a manufacturer at a baseline even without the weapon manufacturer roll on it. I'm wondering if that actually changes anything, or if you get a second roll, it'll just always be the weapon manufacturer and it's not really going to change anything. And then next up, we have the Mad Lad, a legendary SMG. It's also a dataless, and its legendary role is Homemade Ingenuity. Overheats quickly, but also cools down quickly. And the really interesting thing you should note with this weapon is it has a 22 round per second fire rate, which is absolutely ridiculous. Also, I don't think this has a magazine. I'm pretty sure this weapon, because it has the overheating mechanic, I'm pretty sure just all of your SMG ammo is technically in the magazine, so you never have to reload this. But the fire rate is absolutely absurd, and things with super high fire rate with this can synergize with certain effects. And then also has the dataless roll, which secondary fire consumes shotgun ammo, which also interesting to note with that is we have gotten it confirmed that switching the ammo type of dataless weapons, which is their special effect, will actually activate any buffs or effects you have for that other effect. So with this specific Mad Lad roll, you can switch it to use shotgun ammo, and you should be able to just keep it on that and always use shotgun ammo. So let's say you have a bunch of other buffs for shotguns, that would buff up the Mad Lad when using the shotgun ammo. So that could actually be pretty good for a lot of different weapons. Then it also has the CLV licensed mag. This gun has an unlimited magazine size, however, it will heat up and eventually break. Now I'm wondering what effects this has with this SMG. Now it doesn't show a magazine, so it doesn't actually have a magazine like I went over, but I'm wondering if that's because of the COV licensed mag, or if the base legendary of this weapon just doesn't have a magazine in general. Because I'm also wondering, if it doesn't have a mag in general, is this COV licensed mag roll just completely useless? And next up, we have what I think think is the Sweet Embrace, a legendary shotgun. Part of its name is covered, but its legendary role is Adoration. We don't get to see what the legendary role actually does. This is one of the unfinished weapons, but it is a melee one weapon, so you are able to switch elements. Presumably this will also be able to roll any elements. This one is Incinerary and Shock. It does also have the melee one switch roll on it. Again, I'm not sure if that actually changes anything for legendary weapons specifically, but it also has a Jacob's license accessory, so crits will ricochet projectiles to nearby enemies, and the shotgun is 79 times 4. So if it's decently easy to hit all 4 pellets as a headshot, this could actually be really strong, this specific roll at least, because you have 2 different elements you can switch between, and you can just headshot things and ricochet those elemental rounds everywhere. So that could be really cool, and we also don't know what this legendary roll on this weapon is, so it could even be crazier. And that's not really specific to this weapon, but that just kind of shows how crazy some of these rolls could get. And then next up, we have Lucians Flank, a legendary assault rifle, and its legendary roll is Trample. Critical hits refill up to 2 ammo to the gun's magazine. This is obviously going to be completely ridiculous. It is a Vladoff, and what's also interesting with this roll is it doesn't have a Vladoff part on it, like how we've gone over with these other weapons, but it does have an alt fire for an extra barrel, enables a secondary barrel, increasing fire rate, which is quite ridiculous because this weapon just sitting on the ground already shoots 11.5 rounds per second and has over 100 rounds in its magazine. Vladoff has very big mags, so this thing basically has infinite ammo, that high fire rate, that big of a magazine, with being able to increase the fire rate even more, with getting 2 ammo back per crit. This thing's basically infinite ammo. But I'm really interested to see this type of weapon and this specific legendary weapon with some other rolls. Like, could you imagine getting a Jacob's roll on this? So now you have absurdly high fire rate, massive magazine, getting 2 ammo per crit back, so basically having infinite ammo, and ricocheting those rounds everywhere at a ridiculously high fire rate. And then you could also maybe get something like a Torg that would make them sticky rounds. That actually may be one of the craziest rolls in the game, or one of the craziest theorized rolls I've seen so far, because again, crazy high fire rate, has an extra barrel that you can increase the fire rate more, massive mag, it's a legendary, basically doesn't allow you to run out of ammo. Then you could get a Jacob's roll, so it ricochets those rounds, then possibly a Torg roll to get like stickies, but I'm not actually sure part of the weapon would be that Torg. I'm not sure if Torg stickies needs to be the magazine part for that to happen, but this is also a Vladoff weapon without the Vladoff roll currently on it, so there may also be the possibility of getting a Torg magazine on this legendary weapon. So there is just some absolutely crazy possibilities. This thing also has a radiation roll on it, so I'm not sure if we can get other elements, but with that being mixed in, you're now shooting like elemental rounds that ricochet off everything and could be Torg stickies. And then next up, we have Agons Dream, another legendary assault rifle. Its legendary role is Prophetic, but it doesn't currently have a description. And this is another Vladoff weapon. But what's really interesting is this also has alt fire, extra barrel to enable it for increased fire rate. I'm wondering if that alt fire roll for an extra barrel is actually the Vladoff roll of this weapon, even though it doesn't say that, but I'm very curious on that. And if that's the case, that the alt fire extra barrel is actually the Vladoff thing for these legendaries or for any weapons, these 2 weapons we've gone over that are Vladoffs with crazy high magazines and crazy high fire rates could be really strong with getting like a Torg mag on it that can shoot stickies, and more specifically potentially having Torg with Jacob's rolls, so you could potentially be critting and bouncing these stickies everywhere if that's actually how that works. And this one also has an Incinerary roll on it, so if you're getting those rolls, you could be bouncing Incinerary rounds or stickies everywhere. And then next up, we have the Gnawing Hellfire, a legendary SMG. It is a Ripper SMG, and its legendary role is Burning Desire, which doesn't have a description, but based upon its red text, which is all hell can't stop us now, this may have some type of ammo regeneration effect or something like that. It also has the Ripper roll on it, so the gun charges before fully out of firing, but different from the last SMG we went over that was also a Ripper. This actually has a magazine size, so it's quite a high fire rate, but magazine size means you actually have to reload it. But again, maybe the legendary effect has some ammo regeneration or some type of thing that just allows you to keep firing. And then next up, we have the Borill Ballista, which is a legendary assault rifle. It is a Jacobs, and its legendary role is propagation, but it doesn't have a description. Something else to note with this is it seems to be an overheating weapon, so it doesn't have a magazine, it just overheats in 5 shots, it seems. And what I'm really wondering about this weapon is propagation may be something to do with ricochets, maybe allowing ricochets to ricochet like multiple times or something. That just seems like it may fit in with this Jacobs weapon. This sniper also got an alt-fire shotgun roll, fires a shotgun that deals 81 times 8 damage per shot, and based upon the recent public tests, the alt-fire modes, especially with shotguns, are ridiculously strong, so this thing could be really good. It's also really cool to have a sniper rifle with an alt-fire shotgun, so you have that long and close ranges. This thing also seems to do some crazy damage, so I'm really wondering about its legendary effect, because I think the Jacobs ricochet is really cool, and if this has something that maybe allows like multiple ricochets or something, that could be ridiculous. And then next up, we have the Rangefinder, a legendary pistol, and it is a dataless, and its legendary role is precision, but it doesn't have a description on it. Also interesting to note, this has 175% cryo efficiency, so not sure if it can roll other elements, but it also has the dataless weapon part. Secondary fire consumes shotgun ammo, so you can switch this to shotgun ammo, and as we went over, that means that any effects or buffs you have for shotguns will affect this pistol when you switch it over to shotgun ammo. So depending on what precision is, this thing could be crazy, and that also makes Dauntless a very interesting weapon manufacturer, especially on legendary weapons. And then finally, we have the Whiskey Fox Trot, which its legendary role is overdrive. Switch to a secondary mag that can be fired on full auto. This is a Vladoff, so it has a really high magazine in general. But what I'm assuming this weapon is and why it's actually interesting, I'm assuming this is not a fully automatic weapon and more works like a DMR. Some of the developers did actually say that specifically, that some of their ARs are built more like a DMR or something like that. And this does seem to have a decent base damage for other assault rifles, especially when it has this high of a fire rate. So I'm assuming that's the case. It also actually has a really low magazine size for Vladoff, only 40 rounds. So I'm assuming this is like a semi-auto rifle normally, and the overdrive allows you to switch to fully automatic with a different magazine, however that's going to work. So I'm assuming that just means it'll have much higher base damage, but if that's the case, you can mix this with some other things that could be incredibly strong, like Jacobs or even Maliwan. But that's all 10 of the legendary weapons I want to go over in this video. I'm going to continue doing videos going over all the legendaries we've gotten looks at. There's still a handful more. And this is still one of the most interesting and exciting parts for Borderlands 4 for me. Just being able to look at some of these potential roles. The licensed part system is one of the craziest things in any Borderlands game, and I very much can't wait to see and farm all the crazy roles we're going to be able to get when the game is launched. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.